How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Rumour, and welcome back to a brand new video, guys. Today we're going to be talking about another rumor. Now, before we get started, guys, keep in mind, rumors should be taken with a grain of salt. Don't take all this stuff we know as real from the get-go. Always assume that it could be fake. Keep that in mind, guys. Either way, let's get started. It's a rumor here. This was actually posted on mynintendonews.com. This was actually back in 2017, last year, but there is some information here that kind of matches with stuff we've heard about recently. So I want to kind of match this with stuff we've heard, and I want to talk about this. And there's essentially this live stream here from Easy Allies podcast, or not really a live stream, but like a podcast rather, from Easy Allies, where they talk about essentially some rumors they heard back then, a really long time ago, and I want to bring those rumors up, talk a bit about them, and see how they match with stuff we know from today. So let's get started now. So, to begin with, if you want to check any of this stuff, guys, out, I'm going to link it all down below in the description. So, let's get started. Rumor: Game Freak are looking to do something disruptive with next Pokemon game. And here it says, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon have just been released, but all eyes are now set on the next project from Game Freak, the developers behind the Pokemon franchise. On a recent Easy Allies podcast, it was mentioned that they had heard something about the company's plans for the next game, and it's apparently set to be disruptive, like Nintendo did with the incredible The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, to simply explain what they mean here, right? By disruptive, it means like a change in the flow of how the game works, in terms of the battle system, in terms of story, in terms of all the things we know as Pokemon would be different. So think of the Breath of the Wild, right? Breath of the Wild was very different from what we are used to when it comes to Zelda. Like, Zelda for a long time was this very, like, you know, kind of on the rails kind of journey, right? You had a goal, and you had to, you know, go from one point to another, and that's it. With Breath of the Wild, it was an open adventure, a different combat system. It was new, it was innovative, it was different, right? It was a huge, beautiful world. Now, what does that mean for Pokemon if they're doing the same thing and Game Freak's doing the same thing? Well, that means, hey, we potentially could be getting some changes that are good changes for once, because I personally didn't enjoy the changes we got in Sun and Moon. Removing gyms wasn't something I really enjoyed. I just kind of hated the kahunas. I felt like they were kind of just like a very gimmicky thing to do. Like, I thought the kahunas and like the island challenges and island trials, whatever, were just really like gimmicky and boring in a sense. I prefer my gym leaders, and if you can do something with the gym leaders that's more innovative and that sort of stuff, or maybe giving us the option of moving from, you know, like picking which gym we want to take on first, something like that would be great, where we don't have to follow on the rails kind of a journey, like, you know, following it specifically how it's outlined for us, but instead we'd have the option of choosing our own path. You know what I mean? If I want to go to the last gym first, or the third gym second, or whatever, you know what I mean, like, that option of going where you want, however you want, that is something I think Game Freak should do, and I want you to know your opinions on that, guys. But either way, so I was looking at this, and I wrote down a little bit of a list of things that, like, these guys mentioned in their podcast, and keep in mind, this is all rumors, guys, so don't take this, you know, as real from the get-go here. Keep in mind, it could all be just, you know, it's all rumors, so don't assume it's real until proven otherwise. So, Pokemon Switch rumor. Pressure at Game Freak to get the game out. Pokemon Stars was real, but it was a tech demo thing. Now, we already know this, right? So I'm just reading through my little, like, bullet points here. So, first things first, right? Pressure at Game Freak to get the game out. We already know this is a thing, because we've heard this from Game Freak themselves, or rather from the CEO and stuff, that there was a bit of pressure from Nintendo, and we already know, for those who do not know this, the current president of Nintendo is the same individual who pressured Game Freak to put out a bunch of games in the past, hence why we got stuff like Fire Red and Leaf Green released the same year as Emerald, right? As far as I remember, it was the same president back then as well, and he kept pressuring Game Freak until, you know, he was switched down. That was a bit of a slowdown in Pokemon games, and the reason why he does that is because Pokemon's a money-making, you know, machine for Nintendo, so releasing Pokemon games is good for them. It helps them out. It sells a lot. It is really, really, really worth it. So that makes a lot of sense, right? That they're getting pressure. We already know that. Pokemon Stars was real, but it was a tech demo thing. This is something we've also heard about. This is simply a rumor that we all knew based on, like, the things we heard, like, from, I think, Eurogamer or whatever, like, last year. We were hearing rumors about Pokemon Stars being this new Pokemon game, and it was coming from, like, somebody leaking and talking about, like, hey, there's this, you know, thing, like Sun and Moon on a Nintendo Switch, which could be that they actually were doing just a tech demo or a prototype, you know, putting, like, Sun and Moon into, like, you know, this new environment being on the Switch instead with their engine and trying it out. Like, that is a very plausible thing. because they're maybe just trying it out and see how it would, it would work on a Switch instead compared to a 3DS, because keep in mind, they're making now a Switch in hardware, so they want to try things out before they just, leap into it and make mistakes. So keep that in mind. That's definitely something that they may, be looking into. So that makes sense. I'm not sure if that's true though, but we've talked about that in the past. Now, the next one here is that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company want the Pokemon Switch game to be disruptive after seeing the success of Breath of the Wild. And I'll go more in depth on this in a moment, but that's the thing I mentioned earlier, guys, right? You know what I mean? Like, seeing the incredible success of Breath of the Wild and how it changed the formula in such an insane way, right? And going, so far and beyond from what we used to with, Legend of Zelda, it's kind of insane, and that's, I think, what they want to do as well. Like, make a huge change in how the game works in terms of battle systems, which also they talk about in the Easy Allies podcast. They want to change the battle system. They want to change how the game works and the flow of the game, right? That would make sense. It would make sense to do that change now. Seeing as Mario Odyssey did well with the change of its gameplay pace and that sort of stuff. Seeing the change in Breath of the Wild, basically seeing all these big franchises from Nintendo. You know what I mean? Mario. Legend of Zelda, all these franchises are doing amazing with the change and, innovation. So why not do the same thing with Pokemon? Well, here's the thing. For the longest time, this is actually real stuff from Game Freak. They were afraid of, changing the way they did things because they thought maybe people wouldn't like it. Now, keep in mind, they have changed things by removing, gym leaders, adding in kahunas, and all this other stuff. But these are the sort of changes that I see as, not really changes, but rather just, taking the things that already exist there and just kind of changing names of them. It's almost like if you have I don't really know what to give you a little bit of an example here, but if you have two brands of Coke, right, and they literally taste exactly the same. They're the exact same thing, right, but just one has a different label on it, right? It's the exact same thing. Kahunas are still gym leaders, but they just work in a slightly different way, but they have the same purpose, right? The exact same purpose. Same thing goes with the island trials and whatever. They're the same thing as when, you were trying to do all these little missions prior to getting to the gym leaders and that sort of stuff in previous games. It's just literally the same thing, but changed in a gimmicky way to seem like it's new and innovative, but it really isn't. Now, I'm hoping with this Switch game, they're actually going to innovate and change things around. By the way, there's music in the background. This is getting me, teary-eyed, jeez. Either way, so, that's one more thing there. Now, next up here is Game Freak were very nervous to make a huge departure from Pokemon in terms of the style, but Mario and Breath of the Wild's huge changes convinced them that they should make Pokemon as big as possible, like Pokemon on the Switch, as big as possible as a innovation and a big step forward as they possibly could with the games, the same way that the other games did, Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. They want to do the same thing by innovating in such a huge way that you won't recognize it as you will still recognize the characters, the game flow, the game in general, but not the game flow, rather. You won't recognize the battle system. It will be slightly different, right? They want to do that, and that makes me very excited that is real rumors. Now, again, keep in mind, it is rumors, so we don't know, but if they want to do that, changing the battle system, changing the focus of where the camera is on the character, which is something I've wanted for the longest time. I don't like this bird's-eye view of the 3D characters, and, the way Sun and Moon's camera works is bloody awful. I just do not like that whole thing where, it's, position, the weirdest positions, just so it can fit, the world and stuff. That is just awful. I want it to be, a camera that's, set on your back, and as you move, the camera follows you, and it isn't just in this one set position, and it just, pans around. That's just a very poor, I don't know, it's very cheap doing that. I don't like that. So I want to see the camera behind the character, which would be great. I want to see possibly a new battle system, which they talk about in this podcast. Potentially a new battle system. And again, I know I mentioned it a few times now, but keep in mind, what do I mean by new battle system? Well, that doesn't mean they would change it so now it's action combat or whatever. They would still have fight, run, bag, and that sort of stuff, most likely, but they would make it maybe faster, make it in a more good flow, right? Make it a more flowy way, or maybe make it maybe even Nino Kuni or whatever, make that battle style, if you want to. I guess that's one way to do it. But what I kind of see it it's kind of like a Persona 5 kind of gameplay style, right? That's kind of what I'm imagining. Maybe add some options where have a probability for you being able to dodge an attack, right? Do maybe some sort of button mash combo to dodge attacks or evade them and that sort of stuff, and stuff like that, right? Just innovate and change it a bit more, make the combat more fun, because the thing with Pokemon is, it's been the exact same combat from day one until Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. It's been the exact same combat. The only difference is, Ultra Sun and Moon and Sun and Moon are even worse with combat now, because they're very slow, because the games are, having a hard time running on the 3DS, and that's a big issue, right? Because if you already have slow combat, where the animations take ages to play out, the general battles are very stale, and add on top of that lag and delay that makes it even slower. That is awful. That is not good, and that is just bad. That's why the Switch hardware will make it, possible for them to innovate, change their battle system, make it more, interesting. But it's a big problem as well, because we know that Pokemon is a money-making cow. They literally don't need to make any changes, because they can release the exact same thing and keep making money. They can make so much money. In Japan, guys, they sold 2.2 million copies in Japan. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon were the best-selling games of, like, the fiscal year of 2017. They were the best-selling games in Japan still, and they were just the follow-up games of, like, Sun and Moon. They weren't even the main games. Like, they were just follow-up games, the kind of extra versions, right? Which is insane. They're still selling good. Pokemon is selling good, and that scares me, because if Pokemon keeps selling good, they won't try to innovate and change. And I want innovation. I don't want gimmicky changes like the kahunas and stuff. That's not fun. I want actual changes that make the gameplay more fun, make it more engaging, make it more enjoyable. Do something like that. That's just way more fun. But yeah, guys, there's a post here as well about this little, podcast they had here. If you're going to check out the podcast, it's going to be linked down below, guys. But in all honesty, I just want to see some proper changes, and I'm really interested in this because, honestly, if they're looking to, like, make it disruptive and do something disruptive with this next Pokemon game, that would be awesome, because that just means we're going to get a better product. If they put more effort into it, if they try new things and do it in a good way, and also, by the way, bring back gyms. Let's be honest, we all want gyms back. Nobody wants kahunas. Either way, but my point is, I just want to see this next game be disruptive in a good way. Make actual good changes. Improve the combat. Make it more fun. Because the biggest issue, and this is something that I think most Pokemon fans have experienced, Pokemon is getting stale. I mean, unless you just discovered Pokemon as a child or you recently discovered it, you may not be as burnt out from it. But most of us were burnt out long ago because it never changes. The only reason we've stuck by is because they keep doing these, some of the stories were great, like Black and White, amazing stories, great new Pokemon. There's all these old, older games, they've always had something extra about them. But with Sun and Moon, you had a good story that also faltered in some areas. But the gameplay was generally boring. It was slow. Too many cutscenes that really weren't serving any purpose. You could go without them. Too much padding and that sort of stuff. It ruins a game. You don't want the game to be longer based on padding and just extra added stuff. You want it to be longer based on its quality and people wanting to play it for a longer time. They remove things that we like they remove so many things that we love. The national decks and that sort of stuff. They remove a bunch of stuff, right? That we do enjoy. And instead they add in stuff we don't need. That's the issue. We don't need all this extra padding and stuff that's not necessary. Give us fun mini games. Give us things that we actually, want and, need. Give us stuff that we actually feel like we deserve to have in a Pokemon game, like in the past. Give us the awesome things we had back in the day. That's all we ask for. But yeah, guys, sorry for taking this so long. I literally didn't want to make this super long, but I just really wanted to talk about this because there's so many things about this Pokemon Switch game that I want to see happen, but I'm just worried about what's going to be happening with Game Freak and how they're doing this. I really hope this game is going to be good that we're going to be getting, and I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about it. What do you think about this rumor? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? Let me know. And also, what do you think about the battle system? Do you want to see it changed? Do you want to see it improved and make it faster and more enjoyable and more fun to actually experience? Let me know in the comments down below, guys. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Rumour. Have a great day, and bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.